Welcome to Realms Unknown, a sci-fi and fantasy podcast brought to you by the Bugle. This manual outlines standard field maintenance, troubleshooting, and operator safety protocols for the CB3 percussion-directed energy projector. 1.1. The CB3 is crew-portable, man-portable, point-to-point pointed energy transference system using a controlled ontological cascade to accelerate a physical projectile, bolt caliber .75, via pressurized revenant implosion. It is not a chemical propellant weapon. It is not a velocity curse. It is non-refundable if the warranty is breached. 1.2 System Overview. The device comprises 6 primary subsystems: the initial dampening shock, IDS, the tension-inducing chromancy loom, TICL. Which chromancy, you ask? If you have to ask, you don't deserve a ghost-powered crossbow. The actuarial channeling groove, ACG, the quantum probabilistic argument string, the intent carrier munition, ICM/bolt/arrow, and the primary consequence containment chunk, PCCC. 2. Operator responsibilities. The designated operator, hollow-souled Ghost Runner rank E4 or above, is responsible for the unit's spiritual calibration and moral upkeep, per Addendum 17B Metaphysical Hygiene, primarily avoiding damp, sad ghosts, and Realms Unknown. Yeah, that's right. You've just entered Realms Unknown, a weekly speculative fiction podcast brought to you by The Bugle, in which we discuss science fiction and fantasy. I'm your host, published author and comedian Alice Fraser, my companion on this journey, the compendium to my omnibus, the necromancy for dummies to my folk songs of the time-traveling travelers, the footnotes to my endnotes. It's Nate Crowley. Welcome.
Hello, it's lovely to be back.
I'm delighted to have you back. Our subgenre deep dive for today is fictional non-fiction. That is to say, non-fiction texts set in fictional universes. By the way, if you're listening to this, did you know this fine podcast is also a visual feast for your ravenous eyes? Or if you're watching this on YouTube, you can also listen to us through your ears. Subscribe to us on all of the channels. And to find ways you can support this and other Bugle podcasts, you can go to thebuglepodcast.com/donate. You can also go to thebuglepodcast.com to buy my book and all books that we cover here. There is an affiliate store. There's a link in the show notes, and apparently we get a small kickback. News. Science fiction and fantasy news. Netflix has bought Warner Brothers.
Oh, God.
News. Nate, how do you feel about this?
The ogre comes each day to hit us afresh with its mace. You know, it's another big horrible bit of corporate news that I imagine is probably justified somewhere in the press releases as being about consumer choice, but is in fact about shareholders. And I look forward to the subscription price for Netflix soaring to $100 or so in the next year.
Yeah.
Great.
Well, I mean, this is the wonderful influence of the Chicago School of Economics, right? Their idea that economics works a bit like the environment, basically, that it's sort of survival of the fittest, and monopolies are functionally performing the role that humanity has in the ecosystem, and so we should vote for them, basically. I think that's the vibe, because if we vote against monopolies, we're voting against humanity's domination over nature or something like that.
Yes, it's against the natural order of things. Absolutely. Yeah. I say that completely sincerely.
100% sincerely. The other bit of news is that there is now a trailer out for the Magic Faraway Tree movie, and I am feeling sort of conflicted about it because I've been reading the Magic Faraway Tree and the Enchanted Wood to my children.
Same, weirdly.
Yeah, I like so much about it. I really like how the sort of the children are coming from like a very working class family, and they have to like fit their adventures around things like helping their parents around the house and doing building and cleaning and baking, and you know that they've got quite a lot of responsibility for small people. And then also sometimes they go up through the hole at the top of the faraway tree and end up hanging out with the gollywogs, and that's
there's a lot of racism.
There's a lot of like
I hadn't remembered quite how much there was. Actually, it kind of derailed the whole let's revisit these nostalgic pieces from my childhood in a very Minds of Urg way.
Yeah. And it is that thing of you just don't know whether to skip over a couple of pages or sort of have a conversation about an age-appropriate conversation about why we don't have that kind of toy anymore.
So presumably they're going to be sanitizing it quite a lot for TV, one would hope.
Yeah, I mean, I assume that we'll be instead filling it with the things that won't age well from our current from our
Yeah.
current setup.
Hey, the concept of portal fantasy via a large tree is at least solid.
Yes, yeah, definitely. I feel like that works, and the structure of the tree is a good one. So I feel like it can sort of take you anywhere, and they'll probably skip over. Maybe they'll just come down. Maybe we'll just have like a moment where it's like sometime later, and they come through the hole and be like, "Ooh, Mel." I'm not sure.
Let's never speak of that again.
That brings us to what have you been putting into your brain, Nate? What have you been shoving in your head holes?
Yeah, the old mind pit. It's been quite a mixed bag recently, actually, but all good stuff. I finally got around to watching the Batman, the R-Pat's Batman movie, which, as someone who will tolerate a lot of bullshit when it comes to Batman, and so having enjoyed pretty much all the Batman films today, even Batman and Robin, I thought this was the best one. Absolutely thrilled with how Gotham City was imagined as a combination between Glasgow and hell. I thought the way the police were just a sort of a roaring swarm of sort of moist demons was. You can see I like the film so much. I've chosen to use the lighting in this room to present myself as the Riddler with a sickly green underglow. No, I thought I would love to see more Batman done like that, and I'm going to embark on the Penguin series too, because I thought did not expect to be absolutely blown away by Colin What's-name's Penguin in that, but I was. So yeah, I'm sold. I've also been with my daughter watching the final series of Chaos Theory, the Jurassic World animation, which has consistently proved to be more imaginative and interesting than Colin Trevorrow's movies. It had quite a fun conclusion. I think it was most hamstrung by having to be set alongside Jurassic World Dominion, aka the most boring movie ever to feature dinosaurs. But I thought, yeah, they dealt with that hamstring pretty well. It was good fun. There were angry Dilophosaurs. I was a happy boy, and my daughter was a happy girl.
That sounds delightful. I've been engaged in a lot of the Gumnut Babies extended universe. Gumnut Babies by May Gibbs. You got the Wattle Flowers. You got Snugglepot and Cuddlepie. You've got it's sort of one of the things that touches on our subgenre deep dive for this week, which is that May Gibbs is describing the kind of social lives and roles and functions of these various Australian flora as though they had
Oh,
little personalities. And it's written a while ago, so there's some gender role stuff happening, but it's very beautifully drawn and it's very sweet and it's generally extremely benevolent and before its time as far as responsibility towards the natural world around you goes and the sort of the messages of it, that they're all sort of looking after each other and they're all taking care of each other, and even people like Mr. Lizard or Mrs. Snake have their motivations. And the big bad Banksia, I think maybe the big bad Banksia men might fall into the realms of slightly, unless we accept that they are just Banksia seed pods and their sinister little faces are just an extension of the seed pod universe.
are there any platypuses?
Are there any No, I don't think. Not in the ones that I'm reading at the moment.
At home, we do. Again, largely courtesy of my daughter, live with an imaginary of extremely whimsical imaginary platypuses. So, kind of deeply cutesified Australian fauna is very much in our wheelhouse.
Do any of your daughter's imaginary platypi have venomous spurs?
Yeah. Implied to. I haven't talked her through the full reality of. Do you know about male platypus fights?
Yes.
Because they're not entirely immune to each other's venom. So you hear these stories of them after they've been duking it out. They'll survive the venom, but they'll just be sort of thrashing on the riverbank for a while, kind of sleeping it off. And yeah, we haven't gone through that element of platypus social life yet.
That's lovely. I've also, I mentioned last week, I've been going through the Mark Hayden's King's Watch series as a bit of a reread
Oh,
for me, just a bit of comfort reading because I've gone from Queensland to Sydney in the last week, and I feel like when I do a big move, I like to reread to restabilize myself.
Well, yeah, fantasy is great to read when you're traveling, isn't it? Especially when it's about sort of bands of desperate people making do with minimal provisions on the road. I always like to mirror. Yeah.
Your ad section now, because you can't be what you can't buy. And this episode of the podcast is brought to you by the Mental Health Haircut. Having a nervous breakdown? Not sure who you even are anymore? Try taking a friend's sticky beard trimmer or emotionally unbalanced local hairdresser trainee to the problem. Whether it's an inadvisable undercut or trying to dye a word into the top of your head using a tear-stained mirror, the Mental Health Haircut will temporarily distract you from your problems without even beginning to fix any of them. Lose the mop and find yourself. Ting, ting, ting. Ladies and gentlemen, others non-humans, if I can take a minute, charge your glasses, nothing too strong. Yes, that's right. This episode of podcast is brought to you by a teetotal toast. For when you want to show that you care without blowing up a breathalyzer, fill your glass with apple juice, tea, or water, and raise it to the ceiling while making eye contact with a friend or family member that says, someone told me eye contact was an important part of this, and I want you to know that I know that. Half a glass to water, the wine of the lake. And with the new year coming soon, those looking for love without compromising your optimized life, we bring you Unhinged. Unhinged, the AI optimized dating app that does all the work of a relationship for you, from first approach to sexting to planning your first and last date. An algorithmically selected perfect match will just show up at your door. Conflict emerging from your fundamental inability and unwillingness to communicate? We can help with that too. Rest easy with the assurance that her AI bot will present her concerns to your AI bot, and the next morning you'll both receive a bullet-pointed summary of the fight and its resolutions. Your action items and a set of suggested make-up sex positions to re-establish your intimacy. It's not like difficulty is an essential part of human growth. Unhinged. Sign up today for our Christmas special to get 1 month free access to the premium tier of Possible Lovers ad-free, normally twice the price. Use code ROMANCE for 50% off your pants.
I hate how believable that is.
Hey, you're welcome. Just the optimized life is a slippery slope to the grave. Like, optimize everything, you experience nothing. What a treat for us all.
Minimal friction on your slide towards mortality.
That brings us to our trope on a rope section. Each week we talk about a trope that we love, or we love to hate, or we hate to love, but we certainly notice it every time it comes across our path. Nate, have you got a trope on a rope for us this week?
Big rib cages, implausibly large rib cages, giant bones strewn around a landscape as environmental storytelling, but leaving unfortunate biological implications. Okay, I brought 3 examples of this trope. The 3 ways I think it can be used. I would say neutral. So if you imagine this is a D&D alignment chart, okay? So large rib cages neutral would be Subnautica, the video game where you are exploring an aquatic alien planet with lots of extremely well-designed biomes and natural indigenous flora and fauna. In a couple of the biomes, there are enormous leviathan skeletons, which you can swim or submersible through, and they give the impression that once upon a time they were even larger and more nightmarish creatures in this ocean. They did the same in the Borderlands games. They love a giant skeleton. In Star Wars: A New Hope, the droids walk past the crate dragon skeleton, which I think was a sort of replica dinosaur skeleton they dumped in the Tunisian desert. Again, the implications here being monsters. This gets silly. I think people go over the top. In Kong versus Godzilla, at one point, King Kong crosses a bridge, which is a giant sort of serpentine ribcage. I saw a video on YouTube that worked out the animal that left that ribcage would have had to have been 4 miles long, which is fucking stupid, even in a kaiju movie. So it does bear thinking about. I think my favorite use ever was in Perdido Street Station, the novel by China Miéville, where one of the districts in the city of New Crobazon, which is where Perdido Street Station is just a district called Bone Town, which is built in the shadow of an implausibly large ribcage. And there's no explanation. There's never any explanation at any point, which is what China Miéville does best. And I think that's the classiest use.
In the Shadow of the Gods series by John Gwynne, the gods can manifest and have manifested in the past and sort of can or may be able to be brought back to life, but they have these massive skeletons that have been left on the landscape. And when they are brought back to life, I should put a spoiler alert before this, but when they are brought back to life, there's people living in them, and then that's not so good for the people because they are very much sort of brought back from their bones.
Rough place to build your house. Yeah. What does the Bible say
Yeah.
about that? Don't build on sand. Okay, do build on rock. Do you build on a god skeleton? Yeah.
Mm,
Where's my advice on that, God?
my trope on a rope is not dissimilar necessarily. I think I feel like there's a sort of a vibe adjacency, maybe. My one for this week is Lumen Raw Monsters. This is recommended
Oh,
in
okay.
my Patreon chat, patreon.com/Alice Fraser. But they sneak up on you, like quite a lot of sneaking up. And then they loom and roar, give quite, and they put their arms up, exposing their bellies for quite a long time. And you think, why would you bother doing all the sneaking if only to blow it all at the end by doing a big "Wah!" Like it feels.
Yeah, talking as I often do, it seems when I'm talking to you about dinosaurs, that is, I think, the big sort of strategy hole in a lot of Jurassic Park dinosaurs hunting strategies. They'll get right up next to someone and then just scream in their face until they've started running.
I mean, I guess they did go extinct.
They just kept giving too much warning. They love the theater of it too much.
Too exciting.
They love the game.
It's like throwing a fish back in. Like, I could have got you. Let's all just
Go away, you little scamp.
give it a kiss.
Too lenient to live.
And that brings us to our subgenre deep dive for this week. Unfiction, as you called it, when we were talking about this. Non-fiction set in a fictional world, fictional non-fiction. And of course, as always, I put out the call out over on Blue Sky, if you follow us over on Blue Sky, or at my Patreon, patreon.com/Alice Fraser. If you like this subgenre, there is just a stack of recommendations over there. Although I found this one was quite difficult for people because there's no clear line where it crosses over into sort of more traditional storytelling. So we had lots of recommendations, for example, for The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, which is on its face a non-fiction guide to the galaxy, but ends up being very much a sort of story of a person doing a thing. Or mentioning, like Frankenstein makes use of letters and reports. The Hobbit and Lord of the Rings are meant to be first-person memoirs. I wouldn't count any of those, really.
It's a tough gradient, isn't it?
Yeah. I think for my purposes, I want to lean slightly more towards books and texts where the structure of the non-fictional framing is slightly more obtrusive. You can, at various points in The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, forget that it's a guide to the galaxy. There's no hard line in the sand for this, but basically I think if you could mistake it for a reference book for more than, say, 3 seconds.
Yes, I think it's about camouflage, isn't it? It's where there's as much to look at in the frame as in the picture itself. I would say if you were to summarize something at a party to someone, would you start talking about the story first? Then it's not fiction or non-fiction, it's fiction. Would you start talking about the framing device first? Then I would say it's fiction or non-fiction. That's my diagnostic, at least.
So the first one I'm going to throw in the ring then is Dinotopia. Have you ever
Yeah,
read? That's a
I
great
sure
one.
have.
Yeah, of course you have. Yeah, Dinotopia, beautifully drawn diagrams, very naturalist kind of styling in the story. You sort of have to piece it together from the scraps of notes. And particularly, I read it at a time where the piecing together felt like a bit of work.
Yeah, I think it's a wonderful format, that, because as you say, you've got lots of different primary material that you can sew together. My MA was in Victorian travel writing, well, or that era. So looking at people like Alexander Humboldt, Alfred Russel Wallace. So I obsessed with those naturalist accounts, and Dinotopia is a great pastiche of that. Really, really good.
Yeah, I enjoy that very much. And I think I did read it at the exact right time of my life. And it's going to be one of those ones that I'm like setting an alarm to give it to my children at that age because it was so satisfying. And there were these moments reading it where you're still at the age where you're fully suspended your disbelief and you're in this world and you're like, oh, I want to go there.
Yeah.
That's so much fun.
Well, because that's the thing. It's weird, isn't it? By sort of sometimes by backgrounding the story almost and focusing on the way you're conveying the information, you can actually achieve greater immersion because you sort of trick the brain, don't you? If it's a format you only ever associate with talking about reality, you've kind of got the brain's buy-in, right? Because you're used to coming across facts in that format.
Yes, and it gives you more a more sense of ownership of the story as it emerges because you're drawing it out. It's the, putting on the pepper at the table kind of part where you have to bring yourself in and you have to bring your brain in and solve the puzzle as you go. And so you are more invested in the story perhaps than if you were sitting back having it told to you.
It's funny, actually, the examples I brought today were both travel narratives as well. And one of them was a book called Expedition by Wayne Barlow, who's a really seasoned concepts artist in creature design, like from way back. And the book Expedition was supposedly so a voyage to Darwin 4, which is supposedly a moon we found with extraterrestrial life on, and it's the sketchbook of a guy who's given the chance to whiz around in a one-person vehicle and draw the wildlife. And he hasn't always got a great understanding of, and this guy's a phenomenal designer of alien life, right? It's really genuinely unearthly stuff. And he doesn't always have an explanation. He's like, I saw this big thing emerge from a crevice in a mountain and it appeared to eat some gel off the ground, but beyond that, I got nothing. Um, and that's, as you say, really gives you the buy-in. It's like, oh, okay, he doesn't actually have all the answers. This is just what he drew. It's almost spooky in places. It's great.
Oh, that sounds amazing. I'm going to say the power of these kind of context clues can be amazingly good when it comes to fictional nonfiction. I'm going to cite something that I've mentioned before in this podcast and recommended before, which is Mike Duncan's History of the Martian Revolution, which came out as a season of his podcast Revolutions, which up until that point, and without any warning, up until that point had all been real history of the revolutions that had happened in history. And this was speculative fiction, but using exactly the same voice, delivery,
Oh.
format, podcast stream, uh, rhythm, manner of citation, sort of everything was kind of exactly the same delivery mechanism for this fictional story. And it was obviously also a meta text on the nature of revolutions and on the nature of the history of revolutions. And it was so much fun and so well done. And yet to just drop that without any fanfare, I thought was such a great move.
That's a masterstroke when he's well known for delivering facts, and to then just change track smoothly into fiction. Very classy as far as I'm concerned.
What was your other travelogue?
So this is to bookend Expedition, I guess, and to take us full circle round to Dinotopia. It's a book that's not in print anymore. I'm really lucky to have a first edition. Was The World of Kong: A Natural History of Skull Island by Weta Workshops. So when they did they did a huge amount of concept art for the creature design in Peter Jackson's 2005 King Kong movie, where of course the middle third of the film is just a gorilla beating the shit out of various giant nightmarish paleofauna. I love it. But they did a really cool thing, which is after the pre-production was finished, they took all of the concept art for creatures and were, okay, how do we pull this together into a functional ecosystem? And then wrote a naturalist's account of the fauna of Skull Island, but just kept connecting together. The artist would have just drawn some random horrific anglerfish that lived in a river, and so then whoever put the book together, had to come up with how that worked in the ecosystem. Freshwater anglerfish, and the result was again really surprisingly effective, believable pastiche with beautiful creature art throughout.
I
So
love
yeah, I
that.
love that one.
I've just realized that's a job that is a job that I didn't know existed and that I want. It's like
Right.
making sense of things that are not connected because I feel like that's how I write my stand-up comedy shows is I'll, pull these things together.
Yeah, it's a masterpiece of lateral thinking. That's for
Yeah,
sure.
I love it. I'm gonna recommend a game, which is Neurocracy, which was suggested by one of our Blue Sky commenters. It's a game that asks its players to solve a murder mystery through the in-world version of Wikipedia, Omnipedia. And so you have to pick your way through these Wikipedia-like entries to figure out and solve the mystery. It's called Neurocracy and is comes highly recommended.
Sounds a fun rabbit hole, definitely.
Yeah. And that brings us, speaking of rabbit holes, down to the minds of where we talk about things that we used to love, but maybe feel a little bit about now. Nate, have you got something from the minds of
Yeah, now I want to be clear before I say this. It's not the work in question that belongs in the minds, but perhaps my reading of it. So the book's amazing. It's The Years of Rice and Salt, Kim Stanley Robinson, 2002. Like, anyone who's read Kim Stanley Robinson's Mars books know he is one of the greatest living science fiction writers and a guy who does his research big time. So when he wrote a book about how the 700 years of history after the Black Death would have gone if 99% of Europe had been wiped out rather than a third, he did his homework for that. It was, basically a book, what would history have been like without European powers? And it is a very left-wing work. It is very anti-colonial in philosophy, and it, given that a white guy wrote it, it's extremely thoughtful. However, reading it in 2002 as a clueless white teenager, I thought it had taught me everything I need to know about Buddhism and like the history of Islam, and because it was so well researched, I thought I knew way too much having read it. So I guess what I'm looking back on with a cringe is my own feeling of intellectual accomplishment, like sitting doing absolutely all on his shoulders having read it. So Kim Stanley Robinson, yes, extremely culturally sensitive work. Years of Rice and Salt, still stand by it as one of my favorite books. But I'm glad I shut up and read more.
I mean, there's a perfect minds of this is the deadly danger of reading very well written historical fiction, because the authors will take their liberties, but they'll deliver them in exactly the same tone as they are delivering the extremely deep and profound and like well-rounded description of day-to-day life in ancient Egypt or ancient Rome or whatever it happens to be, and you're like, they used to do this and they used to do this, and then also there was a point at which Nero tackled an octopus. You're like, wait, whoa.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah, very, very dangerous thing, but well-written historical fiction. Bit of Wolf Hall. You're just like,
Right.
where are we here? Are we in history, or are we in fiction, or it can be a minefield.
And the danger is it happens with the really good authors, because if they
Oh,
make it seamless and convincing enough, and they have done their research and they presented it very in a nuanced way, but that's not necessarily the conclusions you draw, you know?
I know exactly how Oliver Cromwell felt because Hilary
Right.
Mantel has told me. And that brings us to the end of this week's episode of Realms Unknown. A reminder, if you're listening, to subscribe to the YouTube channel, and if you're watching, to subscribe to the listening channel on whatever pod listener you listen to. And all the books that we cover here on the affiliate store, there's a link in the show notes, including to my book, Passion for Passion. Nate, what have you got to plug?
So a couple of things. Incidentally, the Omnibus edition of the Twice Dead King books that I did for Warhammer are now out at a very reasonable, probably about €12, I think. So it's very small text, but an awful lot of it. And if you want to read everything I've written about Necrons, who are mechanical beings with extreme mental health issues, then Twice Dead King Omnibus is the one for you. More cogent to today, I wrote a book called Notes from Small Planets, which came out very inconveniently timing-wise in the middle of lockdown in 2020. But it was, if you have read a Lonely Planet or similar guidebook, it was a travel guidebook to a series of fantasy worlds that I had invented to make satirical comment on various subgenres of science fiction and fantasy. So very much in tune with this podcast's general theme, and specifically on fiction or non-fiction. If you're interested, I would definitely recommend it. So that's Notes from Small Planets.
Notes from Small Planets. Yes, my book, A Passion for Passion, also qualifies, I think, as fictional non-fiction.
Definitely.
Given that it is the compendium of the works of Nancy Lagarde. I'm running my writer's reboot, which is between Christmas and my birthday on the 7th of January. So from the 27th of December to the 7th of January, it's a 10-day reboot course. I did it last year and found it incredibly useful. We sit down together. There's a lecture once a day, which also goes out over email if you're in a different time zone, and a little workshop where we chat through it. We start with like all of the stuff we know we should be doing to get into good habits for the new year, but we're doing it all together, and we've got good people helping us do it. So just for example, day one, you clean your desk and you clean your desktop and you set up all your notifications and you figure out where your like most productive times have been, and then we go from there to build a proper, useful and your own workflow. So if you are a creative person who feels like they need to restart, hit the reboot, or if you have a friend who is constantly frustrated that they're not getting the thing done, this might be a very good Christmas present, and it is half price for my Patreons. Patreon.com/Alice Fraser. You can sign up there for free, and even for free you get the half price. What a bargain.
And I will also plug, Alice, I was listening to the audiobook of A Passion for Passion, and I did a lot of chuckles, so it's a double thumbs up for that.
Thank you. So patreon.com/Alice Fraser and A Passion for Passion. This is a Bugle podcast and Alice Fraser production. Your editor is Ped Hunter. Your executive producer is Chris Skinner. I'll talk to you again next week.